to Wellness Wednesday here on the Northern Virginia Church of Christ YouTube channel. It's really great to be here, and today we're having a conversation with Mark Rushing. I'm Paolo Ugolini, and our topic is men and wellness. So what we're going to do is hear a little bit of a testimonial from Mark about his specific journey into wellness, but also as we're doing that, have a little bit of a broader conversation just about men in general and our relationship with this topic of wellness. So Mark, thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks a lot for just being open to share about your journey, share about your experiences. Great. So let me just throw it to you here. Share with us a little bit, maybe just about yourself personally, and then specifically some of your life experiences and how that has brought you into the topic of wellness and segued into a personal journey of wellness.
Sure. Yes. So, just a little bit about myself. I was baptized at NC State about 32 years ago, was part of the DC church, from North Carolina, moved here. Elaine and I got married in 1993, just had our 27th anniversary. We went to Richmond to lead a church from 1997 to 2008. And after that time, we moved back here. And I work at the Patent Trademark Office. Elena works for Inova. And we have a daughter, Ellie, who is 16, part of the teen ministry. That's who I am, who we are. But what you, Paolo and I, we had our conversation was about wellness, and you had asked me about my journey and what I'm facing and been through. So to shift gears to that and what I've been through, during that time from 2008 to about 2013, that was the time we came out of the ministry after a lot of prayer, a lot of advice from friends and leaders, and it was a very tough decision that we made to come back here. But that was what we decided on, and we got here, and that was great. We got jobs, that was great. But it was during the recession, and it was very tough times financially. So it was tough changing jobs. It was tough going from the ministry to secular jobs. It was tough moving up here, and to get the same sort of a similar house to what we had in Richmond. We paid much more, and we became financially strapped right when we got here.
Sure.
Because of all of that was going on. So that was a big stressor. I'm coming to stress is kind of the theme of what I'm going with here, but that was a big stressor in our life then. Other things that were going on were, when I got back to my job, I had actually worked at the patent office for a year before I went into full-time ministry, and things had gone smooth. It was a great job, loved it. And so when I came back 12 years later, I thought, it's going to be like riding a bike. I'm just going to jump on and we're going to pick up right where I left off 11 years ago. And it was not like that at all. And I'd forgotten all my engineering. I'd forgotten all my knowledge. And I was like treading to keep my head above water the first year or two. And that was very stressful. So these things were adding up, and I just kept on taking on more and more stuff. And like, I like working in the yard. I'm building a fence, building a deck, tiling our basement and all these things. And at the same time, I was considering law school, and I was going back. So I was doing all of these things, and my plate just kept getting higher and higher and higher with all the things that I was taking on. And I don't know, thought I was Superman and there was no limit, that I could just keep on doing these things. Well, every year we have a Super Bowl party, and I remember this distinctly. Right after I'd finished tiling the basement, we bought a new sofa, and it was a sectional sofa, and I was rushing to get the basement finished before all the brothers and sisters, our friends, came over for the Super Bowl party. And I was like, okay, well, it's out in the garage. I'm just going to bring the couch downstairs, just piece by piece. It's pretty big, but for me, I was like, yeah, this is no problem. So I'm like picking up each piece of the sectional couch, and about the third or fourth piece, I just started getting gassed, and I just tanked. We were able to get the sofa together, and everybody came. We had a great time, but I thought, well, maybe I'm sick. And so I just took some time off and tried to recover. But it hung on. And so, I was going to work and trying to figure this out, and it hung on for a month and then another month. And by the end of the year, I'm going, what is going on? And I started really seriously, I'd already been to the doctor, but I started seriously trying to chase this down, figure out what's going on. And so I had all these tests done. And maybe we'll get into this later, but anyways, I had a number of tests done, and all of the doctors are scratching their heads because they're not sure what's going on. And so I had to enter this journey and figure out and my body's been compromised for 7 years now. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm healing, I'm getting better, and I'm sure we'll get more into this, but I just wanted to share kind of my story and where I'm at with it.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. And certainly, even as you're sharing about your journey, I was relating to just some different reference points there, just about, the stress building up and building up and building up, and it compiling on itself. And whether it's work related, family related, future related, just some of those shifts and changes in life, changing gears, changing careers, going through a physical move. And I'm sure, as just even in this past year and over the past several years, for me and my family, we have done some ministry travels. I moved my family overseas. I've moved back. And so I can certainly relate to just sort of the build up of worries. This has to go well. It's got to go as planned. So on and so forth. And it can sneak up on you.
Yeah.
It can certainly sneak up on you. Even as you're sharing, about the account of just one day you're doing something and then suddenly, boom, it hits you, and trying to figure out what's going on from there. So you talked about then going, obviously, that the first route that you went through was trying to visit a doctor, see a doctor, go the route of just more traditional medicine. And then how did that go for you, and how did those experiences with just a more traditional doctor or medicine then lead you into a journey to wellness?
Right. So I went, and they said, well, what's wrong? And I said, well, I just feel fatigued. I can't do anything. I'm just wiped out. And they said, well, all right, so we'll run some blood work. And they ran blood work, and it came back, everything's fine, and you're fine. Everything's perfect, no problems, no nothing. And I said, well, I'm tired and I'm having a hard time just getting to work and getting to church and just doing the basics. Mm-hmm. And so I want to say I came back again and asked him again. And he said, well, maybe you're depressed. And I said, all right, okay, I don't think that's it, but I hear what you're saying. Maybe I'm depressed. And so after that, I had a sleep study done. I went to an endocrinologist to check up all my, whatever they check, but I was suggested to go to endocrinologist, check with him. I went to a urologist, so they checked my testosterone levels. Mm-hmm. All of these things were tested, and every single time it came back, you're in good shape, you should be fine, maybe you are depressed. Almost every single one said, maybe you're depressed, maybe you're depressed, maybe you're depressed. And I really didn't believe that. No, I did. There's some negative feelings for sure when you can't do what you're used to doing. Yeah. You're feeling negative. But so then comes 2015, and I said, okay, we're in 2 years now. And I said, all right, maybe I am depressed. So I'm going to do everything you suggest to deal with depression. So they would write out this prescription for this. And I went to see a counselor. I went to see Steve Brand. Many of us know. And that was very helpful. Saw him several times. But I was taking meds and different meds, and my body doesn't do well with meds. I generally have, I kind of get sick almost with most heavy meds. And so it was hard for me to find one that worked, but I found a couple that I could keep my lunch down with. And at the end of the year, I said, well, I feel happy, but I'm still tired. I'm still tired. And I'm just not myself. And so that was kind of the traditional route that I took I dove into really. 2015, I felt like I tried every drug under the sun. But anyways, that was halfway through to where I am today with my journey.
Yeah. So from that point, then, was it difficult to think outside of the box a little bit? Was it difficult to think about pursuing some kinds of solutions or therapies or just other routes to feeling better than simply the medication or simply what the doctors were saying? So what was involved in sort of pivoting to things outside of that traditional box?
Well, one interesting thing that happened to me was I kept I was doing my own research, doing my own reading,
Okay.
trying to figure out what is going on. And something that kept coming up with that's very similar to depression is fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I went back to my doctor. I said, I think the second time I got tested, blood work around, I said, well, maybe I have fibromyalgia. And he laughed at me and he's like, no, you don't have fibromyalgia. And I thought, well, okay. And, I remember talking to some Christians about this and they go, well, that's kind of dismissive. I said, yeah, that's how I felt. And, I thought about it later, and it's an interesting thing that I've known or met or heard of many people who've, or a number, not many, but a number of people who've had fibromyalgia, and I think all of them that I know or have met are women. And I don't know if I've met a man who's told me they have fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
And so when he said that to me, I said, I think he's thinking that because I'm a man. I don't think I thought that right away, but later on I thought maybe he's thinking that because I'm a man. And certainly everybody I've talked to who's had it has been a sister or maybe a friend of my mom's or somebody. But
so you're the only man on the face of the planet with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. Is that where this is going?
That's the conclusion. Good night, everybody. But then I get online and there's tons of guys who've had it, right? And plenty of men who shared testimonials about it and who've had it. So I think perhaps it's something that we don't want to talk about. I know it's something I don't really want to talk about. I don't. I shared with just a handful of people the first several years. I just kept waiting for it to get better. I'm like, oh, I'll get better, and then I don't have to, worry people with this. And I'm still able to get around. I can do the basics, but I don't want to go on and on. I don't want to worry people with this. So that was my thought pattern in sharing it or not sharing it, my experience. And part of the reason I kind of kept it to myself. And so I would just share with a handful of brothers, just kind of like my D group or guys who disciple me or I disciple, please pray for me. This is something I'm trying to figure out. And it's not just like I'm a flu where you get it and then it's done. This is a year's thing. So it makes me hesitant to bring it up because I don't want every time I see you, Paolo, Mark, is it any better? And I'm like, no, it still stinks. Is it any better? No, it still stinks. But So those are the kind of the thoughts that are going through my mind and keeping it to myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, that certainly touches on something that we were conversing about even before we started recording a little bit, and also something that I think we both felt like is an important dimension of even this conversation. But just touching on the stereotypes that we can have as men, and the stereotypes that we can even have for ourselves when it comes to things like feeling weak or being in a place of weakness, or being sick or feeling unwell. I'm certainly cut from what I think is probably a more traditional macho cloth, that it's, hey, unless I can see the blood flowing from my body, or unless I see an x-ray telling me a bone is broken, I'm okay,
Yeah.
right? Whatever else may be going on, well, you just soldier through, you don't make a big deal about it, and it's going to be okay. Because and I know there's something for me that I've been getting in touch with, that has impacted both my spiritual health and my physical health over the years. Just something about being honest and getting in touch with my weaknesses. And instead of denying them, instead of just gritting my teeth through them, just really leaning into them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just really going there. Um, so, have there been, what do you feel like have been some of the stereotypes, or did you struggle with some of these stereotypes just along the way within yourself as you just kind of wrestled with this weakness in your life, and even seeking out some alternative therapies? Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Sure, definitely. And the I grew up in sports. I played soccer and I wrestled in high school. Was doing intramurals in college. We used to have a soccer team here in the DC church. We played in the WISL, and I played with that in the '90s. And I loved lifting weight. I loved going to the gym. 3 times a week. I ran the Richmond Marathon. I I was getting involved in jujitsu right before this happened, and I was loving it. But so yes, there's definitely this sense of soldier on, power through that is in me, and I don't want to go around weakness. And I feel like, well, if I'm being healthy, then it should take care of itself. And so there is that I have to overcome, and like you said, leaning into your pain or your weakness is something that I'm learning a lot about. Instead of trying to ignore it or put it in a little box or act like it's not there. And I think that's been a big help. The very thing you said, leaning into it and experiencing it. And I think it's helped me for sure, but also helped me to be sensitive to others. One thing I want to kind of touch that I forgot about was I had like I said, I'd talked to people who had fibromyalgia, and in the back of my mind, I thought, well, isn't that just in your head when you get that? And it's funny, I was typing some stuff in on the internet today, and I was like, is fibromyalgia? And I was looking up, is it a dysfunction, disorder, or whatever? And the first thing, how Google fills in the rest of your sentence with the most popular searches, and I put, is fibromyalgia, and the most common thing is real. Is fibromyalgia real? And that was what was in my head. And it's a tough kind of stigma because you can't prove it. Like you said, it's not a broken bone. You don't you don't test it against something else and go, yeah, that's it. You have it. It's basically a process of elimination. So we've tried everything else under the sun, and so it looks like that's what it is. But those were the things I was overcoming to get to where I am, to kind of admit it, to embrace the pain, and to learn to better rely on God is a big lesson through this whole experience.
Yeah, and certainly, I think, I see a connection of all of that, even doubling back to just being open and honest. And I'm just sharing, here from my own life, about the kinds of things that bring about can bring about this kind. We were talking about the stresses, really, the stresses that we can feel with family, the stresses that we can feel with our job, and just paying attention to and kind of counting the kind of impact that that can have on us emotionally, mentally, and then of course that's all connected to our bodies, and then that it can happen physically. And I know some of it for me is just being honest and real that, well, that's real in my life as well. Because again, an injury for me is traditionally, well, I'm playing basketball and I fall on my ankle and I tweak it, or I'm working with some tools and I accidentally, bang my hand with a hammer. It's got to be something very physical, very obvious, very straightforward that's associated with a singular event, as opposed to just the challenges associated with, different forms of stress and worries and anxieties, which I know as a Christian, I certainly learn a spiritual way of processing those things, but learning to appreciate the way that spiritual dimension of life is connected to my emotional dimension. It is connected to my physical dimension, and just validating all of that. So I don't know if you've been, if you've done any thought thinking or soul searching or realizing, about that yourself, but I think that's an important part of the equation for us as guys as well,
Definitely.
And just getting past some of the stereotypes that, just kind of feeling this kind of stress, feeling this kind of emotion. Well, that's weak. A real man doesn't really notice that. A real man doesn't really count that. But I think, like you had said, and like you discovered online, there may not be a lot of conversation happening between men about that kind of challenge or that kind of stress or that kind of pain. But you read about it online. They're certainly at home searching for it on the internet, finding forums and finding resources online about it. So it's certainly there. So what benefit have some of these alternative therapies had for you then? You pivoted a little bit to looking to some different kinds of solutions. Share a little bit about what that was, if you found some resources or some books or some practices or some exercises or things like that you've included into the equation that have helped.
Certainly, yes. And I've run across a lot of material online, and I've read a couple books. Should I show these now or at the end? These are the.
Feel free to show them now. Sure.
So this one is The Body Keeps the Score. Great book. The author
my wife's favorites.
It's awesome. But the author originally started. I don't know if that was on there, but the author's name, I don't want to mangle it. He started his research with Vietnam veterans with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but then it mushroomed out. He realized a lot of people have these similar symptoms who have been through child abuse or in a car accident or something traumatic has happened to them. And your body keeps a tab on that, is kind of what he's saying. Your body keeps score, and it adds up over time. What you were saying earlier about the stress adding up, he gets into that. Great resource. There's another great book, CFS Unraveled by Dan Norfer, and this has been very helpful to me. Chronic fatigue syndrome, but both of them their themes are stress does add up. So let's say you get in a car accident, pretty serious, it's bad. That takes a toll on your body. Let's say within the same year, your parents get a divorce. That's going to take a hit on you, pretty serious. And then let's say in the same year you lose your job. And so if you get all three of those in a year, your chances of getting CFS or fibromyalgia, I'll call it FMS, but those, if you get, your chances rise exponentially as those things start to compound on your life. And then it may be just a simple trigger. You may just get a parking ticket, and then boom, that's it. It's the straw. But so these books have been very helpful to me in learning that stress does accumulate. A lot of the things that they share as far as helpful ideas are meditation, are yoga, are eating right, sleeping right. Just be careful with the exercise, but some sort of activity is what they like to call it. Not so much, not like lifting weights like I like to, but just walks or riding your bike, just something to keep your heart going. And then dealing with negative thoughts. That's a big thing. And you touched on, and I believe this, is that our mind and body are connected. So when my mind starts getting really, really negative and down and out, my body has a physical reaction, a chemical, like I start poisoning my body with negative and worry, like what's around the corner? What's my next project at work? What do I need to get taken care of? That actually sends adrenaline and other things that you don't want. I mean, it's made for fight or flight. Like old days, we get attacked by a bear. You need all that to run, or let's get out the spear and go for it. One of us ain't going to make it, but we start living that way every day. Mm-hmm. Like there's a bear outside the house, and then that kind of accumulates, and the next thing you know, you're stuck in this rut.
Sure.
So those were some great lessons that I've learned along the way.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. Yeah. If your body is dumping a hormone into your bloodstream, that's really only supposed to be useful in occasional situational circumstances, but it starts doing that again and again and again and again. It's absolutely going to have a physical impact on you over time. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So how has share a little bit about, and maybe this is connected back even to your what you're sharing about negative thoughts. A little bit we talk about the emotional side of things, but also the spiritual side. You mentioned you've been a Christian for a while. You've been a minister, full-time minister for a chunk of your Christian life. So how has this journey into wellness intersected with your Christian faith?
Right. So I think one of the convicting things that's come across when I'm reading these authors is they'll say something like, and you got to get rid of that negative thought, and you got to stop those worries. And I go, yeah, that's a great thing. And then I go, that's in the Bible. That's like I'll read it and go, wow, this is like, this is a great solution. I go, well, I've already read. I know that God said that, Philippians 4, and I know this. So I'm kind of convicted when I go, wow, this insight. And I go, I already know this. This is God's plan and how He wants us to live our lives. So, but Philippians 4:4, I read it 4 through 8. I read it every morning, try to get my day started right, my mind in the right place, and get going. One scripture that I printed out for us for this is from the Message. I like the way Paul wrote, the way the Message translated, but it's 2 Corinthians 12. This is about the thorn. We all know the story of his thorn in his side, and we don't know exactly what he had, but there was something that he couldn't get rid of, and it says, well, he actually has this incredible vision, right, and of heaven, and then in verse 7, this is from the Message. Because of the extravagance of those revelations, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees. No danger then of walking around high and mighty, because I'm on my knees. At first, I didn't think of it as a gift, and I begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that, and then he told me, my grace is enough. It's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. Once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began appreciating the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take limitations in stride, and with good cheer, these limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. And this has been a challenging verse and a very uplifting verse at the same time, but to quit focusing on the handicap and begin appreciating the gift has been a mind change for me. So I thank God for it as best I can. I want it to go, and I believe that it can heal, but I'm going to be grateful for the gift and instead of complaining about the handicap. That's my goal every day.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Mark. And that is a powerful passage, one that I have appreciated myself more and more in different ways, and in deeper ways. I think getting closer to my own version of what Paul is talking about there. As I have learned, and I think like we talked about earlier in this conversation, that when a weakness comes along, not denying it, not viewing it as a problem, not viewing it as a sin spiritually, but leaning into it and embracing it.
Mm.
And when we do that, I think like what Paul is describing there, it takes us on a new journey. It takes us on a journey closer to God. It takes us on a different kind of journey into the goodness and the grace of God that's there in our weaknesses. And it helps us to learn. It helps us to experience, like you were saying, that mind change. So that's certainly a powerful thought and a powerful scripture.
Yeah, it's been life changing, and this mind change, I think, affects our body too. That we've already touched on that. But but I don't want to. I guess I don't want to rush through it. I would be happy today if I was better, right? I would be happy with that. It'd be great. But I don't want to rush through it. There's a lot of great things that have happened through this. It's helped me, I think, be more loving, more compassionate. It's helped me with I've made progress. I think I should say, I haven't mentioned that, but I've made progress. I think I was operating around 65%, like in the beginning, and I think I'm around 80%. That's just where I think I'm at. But I couldn't sleep through the night in the beginning. I would wake up in like agony, like pain, and I would like hobble to the bathroom and then try and go back to sleep, and 2-3 times a night. And now I'm sleeping through the night. Now pretty regularly I sleep straight through the night. So I think that's from leaning into it. I think it's from just saying it doesn't have to get better today. I'm going to learn what I can from this experience, and I'm not going to stress out about it.
Well, thanks for sharing all that, and well said. Honestly, you've just presented some really great, powerful thoughts. Why don't we just end it right there?
Amen. Well, I just want to thank you, Paul. I thank you for your interest. I think you asked me if I'd be comfortable doing this. I said no, but if it would help people, I would be glad to do it. And I just want to thank you for wanting to know more, and then to present this, and hopefully it helps somebody.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. You've done most of the sharing. You've done most of the opening up. You've done most of the heavy lifting here in this conversation. So I just really want to thank you. And hey, like you were saying, we've got to appreciate what we learn and what we get along the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so along the journey, we've been able to connect over this conversation. If you weren't going through this challenge, you and I wouldn't have had an opportunity to connect over these topics, to get a little bit deeper and a little bit closer in our friendship. And also, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation right now. And this conversation wouldn't exist to maybe help some other people, and particularly some other men out there who might be going through some similar things. So thanks again, Mark. And just want to thank everyone who is watching and has tuned in for this portion of Wellness Wednesday. God bless.
Amen.